book is amazing, so I encourage you to all pre-order it. Let's turn in prayer, please. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Holy Spirit, please come be with us in these words. Bring me the peace that you've brought Kristen. Lord, I just beg for your peace as I speak these words, and I just pray that you are present in my words, because I know that each one of these women are exactly where you meant for them to be today. Lord, thank you for bringing us all together. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. How many of you can say that you grew a baby and a brain tumor at the same time? I'm very thankful that that applies to no one else. And actually, as I was reading through my speech, I probably actually grew maybe 2 or 3 babies and a brain tumor at the same time. But I am Michaela Gasseling, and like Natalie said, I got involved with Women at the Well through, I think, just writing. I've known Kristen for many years, and she knows that I love to write, and so she invited me to write, and then I've been doing that, and I think Natalie found out about me through that writing and invited me to share my story, and I told her that I'm not a speaker. That's why I write. But as even my 10-year-old daughter will tell you, when God tells you to do something, you're just supposed to obey. So here I am, and bear with me because I lost my voice this week. But my husband and I, my husband Matt, we have 4 children, and we live north of Alliance in Hemingford on his parents' farm and ranch. So we've been married for 15 years as of Thursday, actually, and her oldest daughter is almost 11, and then we have 1 son who's 8, a 5-year-old, and then my baby will actually be 2 this week. So I live in a small town, Hemingford, and I also grew up in central Nebraska in a very small town north of Broken Bow. So I essentially moved from one end of the Sandhills to the other. I'm very familiar with Father Nash's territory down Highway 2. Probably drive there in my sleep. But I also like to run. I love to read and write and bake, and I have my own blog that has kind of been put on hold for the last couple of years since I've had the last baby, but I like to adventure with my kids, and I have gotten involved with Women at the Well just as a way to, I kind of committed to myself. I started teaching CCD classes at our church in Hemingford and helping with the RCIA classes this year in Alliance, and Women at the Well has just kind of been a way for me to keep encouraging myself and giving myself the resources to learn more about the Catholic Church and the Catholic faith, and I'm always asking Natalie questions, and you know, we all know we will never know everything there is to know about the Catholic Church, but anyway, because I am a convert to the church 8 years ago, so with all of that said, now that you know me, I am presenting up the last chapter of the book, which is a little bit intimidating after all of the other speakers. They all did a wonderful job. So, the power of intercessory prayer, and I think that's not the same verse that I put on the first slide, but keep this verse in mind. It's from the book. I don't remember what page, but 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1. I exhort first of all that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and giving of thanks be made for all men. So I'll kind of summarize the chapter for you, and I guess the bonus of going last is the last chapter is a very short chapter, but don't skip it because it is very good. I'll also tell you a story, and my hope is that you will leave feeling encouraged that our prayers are absolutely heard by God. Amber talked about the different types of prayers. We're familiar with prayers of thanksgiving. We always want to give thanks to God. It helps us to develop a grateful heart. We can give thanks in any situation, like it says in Psalm 118:21. We have confession as a prayer, adoration, supplication, and then intercessory prayer. And that's not an exhaustive list of the types of prayer, but intercessory prayer is a type of supplication but instead of asking for something for yourself, you're asking on behalf of someone else. So we have Saint Therese again coming back. This quote really stuck out to me. How great the power of prayer is then. It's like being a queen with constant, free access to the king's presence, able to obtain everything she asks for. It's such an image of just being able to, like, how lucky are we that we literally can talk to God anytime, anywhere. So I've definitely been on the receiving end of God answering prayers. And so I'll tell you about the time that I personally received miracle after miracle, at least by our worldly definition of miracles, all because of people praying for me. And just for fun, if you want to, you can keep track of how many times through this story you see God's hand in this. So I'll take you back to the summer of 2020 during my 4th pregnancy. I was having headaches that got progressively worse through pregnancy, and by the end, they were just absolutely debilitating, and we thought that maybe the headaches were just a sign that I was gonna have a boy. But I also noticed around the same time that I had lost the hearing in my left ear, but the corn was pollinating, and so I just chalked it up to allergies and being congested. And but then by about the end of August, I also started noticing that I was having issues with my balance. Like, I could not walk in a straight line, and I was bumping into doorways and like really obvious, noticeable things. But again, I just chalked it up to pregnancy symptoms. I guess we can chalk about anything up to pregnancy symptoms. But then, as my headaches got worse, I kind of could feel in my gut that something was wrong, something serious was wrong. But I just kept promising my OB doctors that I would go to a primary care doctor as soon as I had the baby. But 4 days after delivering our sweet baby girl in October, who is now a little Spitfire, I was in so much pain from my headache that I couldn't function. For the 4 days that I was home, I literally laid in bed moaning, and my husband would bring me the baby to nurse, and God bless him, he took care of our 4 kids until finally he took me to the emergency room in Scottsbluff on a Saturday night. Scottsbluff isn't that far away from where we live. But I had an MRI, and it revealed that I had a large brain tumor at the back of my brain. And not only that, but it had gotten so big that it was causing swelling of my brain because the fluid couldn't get down out of my brain, which meant that I needed surgery as soon as possible. At that point, we didn't know for sure if the tumor was benign or cancerous, and the surgeon and the doctor estimated that because of the size of the tumor and because it ended up being a slow-growing tumor, it had probably been there for 5 to 6 years, which is why I say that I chalk this up to a baby and a brain tumor, but it literally had probably been there since about the time I was pregnant with my son. So I probably grew 3 babies with brain tumor. But now it was to the point that it was so big that my brain just could not compensate anymore, and it was blocking the fluid from going out of my brain. So my first hurdle was getting to Swedish Medical Center in Denver. Happens to be the best neurology hospital in the entire Midwest. That's where I needed to have the brain surgery. Because of the weather that night, it was October, it was cold, it was sleeting, it was foggy, there were no helicopters that would fly. So I needed an ambulance ride to Denver, but the ambulances in Scottsbluff were out on other emergencies. They tried Bridgeport, they tried other places with no luck. But I forgot to tell you that in my prior life, prior to becoming a stay-at-home mom, I'm an ultrasound technologist. So when we went to the emergency room that night, the physician working was one who I had worked with for 7 or 8 years when I worked in Scottsbluff. So I think he bent a few rules and went a little above and beyond and found an ambulance from Torrington to come over and take me down to Denver. But because of the really strong diuretics that I needed immediately and on the way to Denver, I had to have a registered nurse with me, so I needed more than an EMT to ride with me. Again, couldn't find anyone at that moment, but my husband, while we were in the ER waiting for the MRI and everything, had called one of my best friends, who I guess is his person too. So she had come to the emergency room to be with us and basically snuck in because, you know, it's COVID and no one can go in, but she works there. So she happens to be a flight nurse. So she rode in the ambulance with me to Denver. She put on her flight suit and clocked in and rode with me. I have goosebumps. So once I got to Swedish, I continued on the medication to decrease the swelling in my brain enough to make it safe enough so that I could have surgery. And I was pretty optimistic about the surgery, but I was also realistic, knowing that there was no guarantee that I would come out of surgery without any lifelong disabilities, or that I would even survive the surgery. In the 2.5 days of waiting for the swelling to go down enough that I could safely have surgery, I wrote messages and made videos on my phone to my husband and to each kid. My family was obviously on my mind the whole time. At one point, I broke down, feeling upset that I couldn't spend those first few precious days after birth bonding with my newborn. I was using FaceTime to talk to my mother-in-law, who had my baby, and I started crying and asked, what if my baby doesn't know me when I get home? Because I hadn't really gotten to know her, and I didn't know how long I was going to be in the hospital. But God bless my mother-in-law. She reassured me that my baby would still know me, and we made a video so that she could play for the baby, so that she could hear my voice. And my baby did know me when I got back. But speaking of that newborn too, my friend who had rode in the ambulance with me, not only is she my guardian angel in so many ways, but about halfway to Denver, I halfway sat up on the stretcher because I had had so much pain medicine. I halfway sat up on the stretcher and said, what about milk for my baby? And she said, I'm already on it. She had already called a bunch of our friends who had newborns, and even my midwife got enough breast milk donated that we had enough milk for the entire 13 days that I was unable to nurse. So anyway, now we're back to right before surgery, and I was feeling really calm, but I think I was the only one feeling that way. My husband, my mom, my friends later told me that everyone else was crying, and I was just having another day, like hanging out in the ICU. And it was very strange that I was so calm, because I'm a very anxious person. I really took heart Kristen's talk about worry, and I've struggled with postpartum anxiety after my third baby, but at that moment in time, I was just calm and at peace. And we had called a Catholic church up the street from the hospital, and a priest came and did reconciliation and anointing of the sick. And my surgery had gotten pushed back a few times, which if you've ever had surgery, you know how annoying it is to be waiting in the hospital and waiting and waiting. But it was such a blessing, because had it not been pushed back, I wouldn't have had time for that priest to come pray with us. And I know that it gave us all such a sense of peace. The peace of God that surpasses all understanding, just like Kristen talked about. So now I am 7 days postpartum, and it's finally time for surgery. And I have to talk about how all the departments at Swedish Hospital have to be commended, because it's a huge hospital, and their plan was for me to go to the interventional radiology department first, where they did like a catheterization or an embolization procedure, where they just go in through a vein in your groin and go all the way up to the tumor and cauterize or cut off blood flow to a whole bunch of blood vessels in the tumor, because it was so big and vascular. They needed to make it safe enough that I could have surgery, or at least to make surgery easier. So they wanted to do that immediately before taking me to the operating room, so that I wouldn't have to be sedated and intubated twice. So they took me directly from interventional radiology right to the OR, and it went so smoothly, and it was just amazing. If you know how huge that hospital is, or if you've ever worked in a hospital and know how hard it is to coordinate things. So then after that, my surgery, just the surgery part alone, would be with 2 brain surgeons, and they prepared us and told us that it would likely take 12 to 16 hours to do the surgery because of how big it was and the location, and obviously it was encasing the cranial nerve that deals with my hearing, which is why I had lost my hearing. But the surgery took 4 hours. 4 hours. And they removed the entire tumor completely. So then I was supposed to stay intubated for the day after surgery because, again, because of where the tumor was located, they weren't sure if I would be able to keep my airway open on my own or if I'd have trouble swallowing. But just a few hours after surgery, I tried to extubate myself, and so they extubated me, and I didn't have any trouble swallowing or breathing. And also, we didn't know then if I would have issues with my balance, where I had issues before, or weakness on my left side, or even be able to walk on my own after surgery. But this was on a Wednesday morning, and I had been prepped and taken to surgery on a Tuesday afternoon. So Wednesday morning, I was up and walked to the bathroom by myself with no help other than the nurses, making sure that I could do it. And you think that sounds amazing, but if you know me, you know it's just because I needed to go to the bathroom and brush my teeth. It had been a whole day since I'd brushed my teeth. Just wanted to go brush my teeth. So, but it was an amazing feeling. So here's my little Cassidy Sue. And I'm a little behind. So this area in the white, that's the MRI image showing the brain tumor. So it was almost 6 centimeters, pretty good size. And then a picture from right after I woke up from surgery, icing my neck. You don't realize how many muscles are in your skull and neck. Who knew? But I will never forget the look on my surgeon's face when he walked into my room, the ICU, after surgery, and saw me sitting up in bed, talking to him, and then he had me get up and walk around the room because I don't think he believed it. He thought for sure I would still be on the ventilator at that point, and told him, this is just the power of prayer and a mother's love. I have 4 babies at home I want to go home to. So later that day, they moved me out of the ICU into a regular hospital room, and they were planning probably some physical therapy and occupational therapy. But other than showing them that I could shower myself and go up and down steps because I have steps in my house, I didn't need any physical or occupational therapy. So all of those things, the most amazing thing is that just 3 days after I had major brain surgery, I walked out of that hospital on my own 2 feet. So that is the power of prayer, specifically the power of intercessory prayer and a lot of God's grace. I was praying, of course, but within hours of my diagnosis, word of my condition and impending surgery spread largely through social media. One of my closest friends had sent on a prayer request. So social media gets a bad rap, but there are positive things too.